Hello my darling beautiful friends, welcome to a new video. So hi, I'm Kat and welcome to today's video where we're going to be going over my physical TBR and reading the 3 most popular and 3 least popular. So I looked on Goodreads and I basically figured out which books had the most ratings. So by most popular, I'm doing this entirely based on which books have the highest number of ratings out of what I own and which books have the lowest number of ratings. And we're not really going to compare them, but we're just going to see. We're going to see what I think of these books. Like the ones that have the most ratings. I'll tell you right now, I understand why. It's because most of them are older books that are very popular, and the ones that have very little ratings are these ones that maybe deserve a little bit more hype. So as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe, and let's start by taking a look at today's TBR. So I'm going to start by going over the 3 books that are the most popular, and I have already started one of them and gotten a little preemptive action on this. But the book that has the highest number of ratings at around 2 million is Jane Eyre. And am I surprised by this? No. This came out in the 1800s. The Bronte sisters obviously are incredibly popular writers, and even to date, so many people just love their romances, love their stories, love their romances, love these classic tales. And yeah, this is a classic, so obviously it is going to have a lot of ratings. I've never read this. I personally am very hit or miss when it comes to classics. There's some I love, but I would say the vast majority of the time I just find them a little boring. So I've been putting off reading this for the longest time. I've also never seen a movie about it. I know the gist of the story, but I don't know that many details, and it is time to get to it because also it's so popular and it is one of my best friend's favorite books, so I would like to actually read it and be able to talk to her about it. The next one we have with about 1.3 million ratings is Dune. And again, this is one that came out so long ago. This was published, I believe, in 1965, and obviously has been one of the most popular sci-fi books of all time. It has also been one of those books that has changed the entire sci-fi genre. So so many things are based off of this, or maybe not based, but we could say inspired by Dune. And yes, I've started reading it because this is quite a big book, so I decided to start chipping away at it, and I will say so far I'm loving it. But yeah, I'm very excited. I also did just see Dune Part 2, and that is partially what inspired this video, is I wanted to find a reason to make myself read this, but I'm really enjoying it so far and really excited to keep going. And then the third of these most popular is one with 900,000 ratings, and that is The Girl Who Played with Fire. So this is the sequel to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I did read 10-ish years ago, and I think I gave that one a 4 or 5 stars when I read it. But again, it's been 10 years, and I have probably owned this copy for 10 years now, and kind of was getting to that point where it's I should just get rid of it. I'm never gonna read it, but here we go. We're gonna give it a try. Do I remember anything from the first book? Very little. I might have to find some Spark Notes reviews on it, or watch the movie or something, but very little that I actually remember. I know it's about a detective, I believe, and a hacker. Yeah, I was kind of very much at this point where I was never actually planning on reading this, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see if I discover maybe that I love it. We'll see. I'm also giving myself the grace that I can DNF this one if it really doesn't go for me, but yeah, we're gonna give it a try. And yeah, I'm not surprised that any of those were in these top 3 most popular. But now we are going to look at the 3 lowest rated, which are a much more interesting selection and very random books, I think. So the lowest rated book I have is The 5 Deaths of Roxanne Love with 320 ratings. I got this in some random PR box at some point. I have never had any interest in reading it. So it is somebody who Roxanne Love isn't human. She tries to fit in but can't conceal her ability to defy death. She's on the run. Her only ally, a dangerous detective with secrets of his own. So really know nothing about this. Obviously, I have not seen a single person talking about it, so I'm interested, but a lot of these I'm feeling very unconfident on how it will go for me, a lot of these lower rated ones. So this is the next one. Then with only 512 ratings, we next have The Star and the Strange Moon. This is I think a magical thriller. So it's takes place, there's 2 alternating timelines, one in 1968, one in 2007. In 1968, there is an actress who disappears, and then in 2007, I believe they are investigating it. So this is, I think, magical a bit, and this did come out fairly recently, I think just in November 2023, so that could be why not as many people have picked it up. Then with 681 ratings, we have Desert Creatures, and this is sci-fi, Okay, so it's a world that's grown desiccated and treacherous. One young woman will find salvation or become just another rot, lonely skull in the sand. So it's a story of endurance at the expense of redemption. So I remember being very, very excited about this one when I first heard about it, that it sounded like a little bit more of a weirder sci-fi book, which is one of my favorite things. So I am excited about this one and very curious to see if it actually is good and maybe an underrated sci-fi read. So these are our 6 books that we'll be reading in this video. I'm definitely very excited to get going and very curious to see how this is going to turn out. Will I like these very highly rated ones, or are they just going to be a flop for me? And these really underrated ones, are they going to be new favorite? Who knows? Stay tuned to find out, and let's dive into reading some of these. I feel like I'm very incapable of doing things in like a super logical way. So I've started 3 of the books and I'm kind of waiting to see like which one I guess grips my attention the most and which one I'm like have to keep going forward with. But also it's very possible that I'll just be tandem reading all of these books at once. So to start with, I'm about 60 pages into this and there was quite a bit that I forgot what happened in the previous book, but I did kind of a refresh. But I don't know, the start of this is making me feel super weird. Like there was this whole scene about our main character, Lisbeth, who is, she's a hacker genius. She had like cosmetic surgery at one point, like in between the 2 books. And there's this whole scene about like her having new breasts and just like walking around, like just going on and on about how she's like getting used to these new boobs and like all this stuff. And like just the way it was written was really like, yeah, you could tell a man wrote this. And that, it just felt super weird to read. And also she is 26 and right now she's having like a sexual relationship with a 16-year-old and really, really feeling uncomfortable reading this. Like it just really is not hitting in any good way. And I can't tell if this is like because it was written by a man, because of like product of the times, whatever. Like I think this only came out like 15 years ago, but really uncomfortable things just kind of to start it off with. Like I don't really know what the author's intent was, but with that, but it feels really weird. Then I'm 20% into Dune and I'm loving it, really, really loving it. Where we're at right now, the Atreides family just got to the planet Arrakis, where they've been sent by the Emperor to basically take stewardship of the planet, where previously it had been the Harkonnen family. And one thing I really like about the book is that there is, in the movie, like this conspiracy that takes place, this betrayal. And in the book, you literally find out from chapter 2 who's involved, what's going on. And it's kind of setting like a nice, like you don't know when that betrayal is coming. Like it's a nice different type of intrigue, where in the movie you didn't know what was happening, you didn't know who necessarily was involved or why, but they set it up like very, very much where you're like, you know something is coming and you're just waiting to see it. And I'm loving this so much more than I thought it would. I put off reading Dune for the longest time, like years, because every single person I know would tell me that it was like the driest and most complicated sci-fi that they've ever read. And like so far it's just like, it's a sci-fi book. Like I don't know, it's not anything that complicated, and it could be just because I'm familiar with the movies, but like I am not finding that in any way. And yeah, really, really enjoying it, like obsessed. And like in my insanity too, because I do want to get more bookish tattoos. That is one of the things, like I have one planned for right here. I'm gonna get like a big book that I'm actually getting on my birthday this year, and then I want to start getting more quotes from books. And I already found one from here that I would love to have tattooed, which is "Fear is the mind killer." And I love that quote. I love it so much, and I would just love to get that tattooed somewhere on me. So the fact that I'm already like that obsessed with it, great sign. And then I've been listening to the audiobook of Jane Eyre. So I'm 10 chapters in, which I think comes to about 80 pages of the book. And it started off very, very rough for me, I have to say. Like it was really, really rough for me to just have any interest. Like I really was not enjoying it at first, but I think we've hit a stride right now where Jane is an adult. I think part of what I didn't enjoy is that the first 3 chapters were very much like her as a child. So now she's an adult, and I think the romance is going to start soon, but I'm definitely much more interested in it now. Like I'm starting to get a bit more invested and get a little bit more of a sense of the writing. I'm like starting to get a bit more of a sense of the writing and like understand how things are going and what the author is like saying and everything. So I'm getting much more into it. And yeah, I think this I could enjoy. Just it depends like how much I care about the romance, I guess, but I'm feeling much better about this one than I did. And so yeah, I have all 3 of those on the go right now. I really feel like I should finish at least one of those before I start on some of the least popular books. I was originally planning on just like reading one of these at a time, but there's no way that's gonna happen. So I'll probably just be checking in periodically as I have like more progress on these. So I'll probably just be checking in periodically as I've read more of these books and I have more thoughts and stuff to talk about. So I watched the original Dune movie from 1984 last night, and very quick thoughts, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. The storytelling, while they did manage to get it into one movie, they really left out a lot of important development, I think, and basically completely erased the Fremen people and so much of the story and the point of the book. And also the fact that these characters, they were constantly showing you like their thoughts. So in the sense that there would be thoughts, like what's in their head, you would just hear them. Basically erased any need for the actors to actually act with other people and to show anything on their face, do any real acting. And yeah, hated it. Truly thought it was terrible. Never laughed harder than the Alia scenes though. I think that those were some of the funniest things I've ever seen. And yeah, it did not age well. So would not recommend unless you want to have a good laugh. And also don't watch it sober. But yeah, the remake, really appreciate it now. Like appreciate it on a whole new level. And I don't have a lot of reading updates. The only thing, so The Girl Who Played with Fire, I'm that far in, which is like 270-ish pages. This, I've actually gotten into it, which I wasn't expecting. I really was thinking that this would be like such a slog to get through. And while the writing style is very different, it's very like a cold writing style, I would say, in that the writing is very blunt, it's very factual. And I do remember that from the first book, is that it was very much just like stating what happens, you know, like there's nothing that interesting about the writing style. But I've definitely started to get into the book. We're following in this one basically an expose of sex trafficking within Sweden, and there are these 2 reporters who come to this magazine that one of the characters owns, and one of them has a book to be published, the other has a thesis, and they're going to do this gigantic expose of all of these things that have been discovered. And then right before it is set to be released, the 2 journalists who were doing that were murdered. That is like what just happened, is that they're murdered, and now it's going to get like really intense, I'm sure, trying to figure out who murdered them, who was trying to hide this, and probably like delving into like these deep levels of corruption, because the journalist was really hinting that there's a lot of dirty cops who could be involved and who are taking money to like look the other way. So I'm actually getting pretty into this. Like it's very much, these books they're not quite thrillers, they are mysteries, and you're like delving into a very factual, intense discovery of what's happening. So it's very like methodical, very like unravel these layers of mystery. And I do think I'm saying like I'm only right now like getting really into it. Like I did definitely enjoy what I was reading before, but it wasn't like addicting yet, and it's starting to get there. So feeling good, actually pretty good about this one. And then haven't really made any progress on anything else. This has kind of been what I've been focusing on lately, is I want to try to get through this because I was feeling that it could be one of my least favorites. So I really wanted to I've been setting myself like a 50-page a day goal, and it's actually coming along pretty well. And yeah, I'm getting much more into it than I thought I would. So we went to Silent Book Club last night, and it ended up actually being the most fun thing ever. So they just started one in my small town, and it's at a local brewery, so it's gonna be like the first Tuesday of every month, I guess. But it was super fun last night, and I actually got my boyfriend to come along. But I brought Dune with me, and I really managed to get like a considerable amount of it read, because it ended up being like the perfect time to just sit down and like intensely focus on a book, which has been a little bit since I've had that like zero distractions, nothing else, like just like my intention is 100% on reading. So I really loved it for that like reason alone. But but I got a very big chunk to do last night, and I'm still very much enjoying this. I really am enjoying the book almost more than any of the movies. I mean, the old movie was terrible, but I'm just really liking it. A lot of the things in this one that I didn't realize is there's so much more of a focus on the ecology of the planet of Arrakis. There is such an intense focus on what is keeping this planet going, and this state of keeping things in balance, and how all of these resources are so precious to the planet. And I think that really is giving something so interesting to the book, is that it has this intense focus on that and the planet itself, which didn't really show through in the movies. So I'm actually really enjoying that. And I think that might be one of the things that people complain about when they say Dune is dead, is that there is a lot of science in it. And I think that kind of is people's problems, but for me, I come from a biology background, so it's not really that much of an issue for me. It's something that I really do enjoy reading, so this is just going fantastic. And then otherwise, I've still been listening to Jane Eyre on audio, and I'm just under 50% in right now. And I think within the last 10% is when I actually finally started to get into this book, because up until then it was a lot of, I would say, backstory almost, because we're really setting the scene of who Jane is and what her life circumstances is, where she is in life, and how she's getting to this romance that's coming. And so it's an orphan child of unfortunate circumstances, raised and treated badly, and she becomes a governess for this rich man's ward. And where we're starting to see now is that there is definitely a romance starting to bloom between her and this man, and Mr. Rochester, which I've definitely heard that. But yeah, I'm really starting to enjoy it, and I'm starting to actually get into the story and really curious about what's going on. Even though just through, I guess, pop culture, I know a lot of the things that happen in this book, I'm finally starting to get actually invested, which is really nice. So I'm starting, the first part of this, I definitely would have said it would be I don't know, a 2-3 star, because I just could not care at all, but starting to get there. And then the final update for today, I started reading The Star and the Strange Moon, which I'm that far in, and this one we are following, there's dual storylines. So there's one in the 60s where we're following an actress who used to be very famous and is kind of on a decline, and I think she goes missing. Something happens to her. But we're also following a storyline in 20 or 30 years later of a young boy whose mother passed, and she was an actress, and he's starting to investigate this mystery, because there was one point where his mother saw a picture of this actress in the 60s who had disappeared, and she had this incredibly terrible reaction. So he wants to investigate this actress to see what happened. And I think it's going to be, she disappears in one timeline, and in the other timeline he is trying to figure out the truth of it. So it's all right so far. It's not really anything that spectacular, but it is pretty early still. It's still just setting up a lot of what's going on, so I really don't know yet where this is going to go. But yeah, those are the updates for today. So I need to actually sit down and try to finish one of these books, because right now I have 4 on the go, and I need to actually focus and make sure I get one of these done. So maybe that will be my goal for now. So I've actually made some progress finally, that I finally finished reading some books. So first off, finished reading Jane Eyre, and I have really complicated feelings on this, I think. So I really went into this thinking that the romance was going to be the forefront, and that the primary thing we'd be following is this romance between Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester. And that absolutely was a very leading thing in this, and it was one of the main points, but it wasn't the thing about the book, it wasn't the number one thing, the thing that this entire book is based on. It's really Jane finding her way in life, finding who she is, finding her her purpose, and what she wants to be, who she wants to be. And there's some parts that I really enjoyed, and some that just really dragged for me. And I'd say I think the first 40% or so wasn't super into it, and then there was a good chunk towards the end that I also wasn't super into. And it just it's hard, because the things that I was into, I was really into, and I was very deeply invested in the things when she's finding about Mr. Rochester and his whole thing, and when that love story was starting to happen, I was very invested in that. And it just wasn't as much of the book as I was hoping for. And also I also didn't like Mr. Rochester, I guess, as a love interest, but at the same time I was very curious and invested to see like where that storyline went. So even though I wasn't like the biggest fan of his, I was still very, very interested in it. So it's kind of hard. Like I'm really debating where I want my rating to sit. Like there's the parts that I really liked, I really liked, but I think because the majority of it was just so bland for me, I'm gonna kind of have to sit around like a 3-star. And yeah, that's primarily just because a lot of it I could like really have passed on, and a lot of it I just like didn't really care quite as much. Like it wasn't really anything that made me excited. It was just kind of like trudging along for a lot of it. But I'm really glad that I finally read it, and I'm probably gonna watch the movie later this week, so, or one of the movies, so I'll share my thoughts on that. But yeah, overall it was okay. I'm glad I read it. Another classic down. And yeah, still kind of convinced that like a lot of these like classic romances are not fully my thing. And I also finished reading The Star and the Strange Moon, and this is one that I'm gonna say it was so weird and so interesting, and I am like actually offended that not enough people have read this, and I highly would recommend picking it up because it was just weird and like unlike any other book that I've really ever read before. So it was kind of like a thriller but with some magical aspects that were very strange, very weird, and it took a very long time for what I felt like was the primary like mystery portion of it to get started. And then once it did, it was something about it just like drew me in, and it was like haunting. It was like weird, very like strange, and you just had this like weird sense of unease going on. But in this, we are following 2 timelines. So one of them is 1968, and we are following this actress named Gemma Turner. She is an American actress who recently has kind of like lost her popularity. She had a string of like bad movies and is kind of like starting to be like a little bit less popular. And she gets cast in this French movie called, what is it? L'Étrange Lune. And she is brought in. It's his famous director. He wants to cast her, and it's just supposed to be his like first horror movie, and she offers to let her help with the script because she's wanted to be a writer for quite some time. And as she's kind of like typing up notes for herself, there's like these mysterious notes that are appearing and seemingly from nowhere of someone saying like, oh, good job on this one, but blah blah blah, like, or you could try better. And then she thinks that's weird, but she doesn't really know what's going on. And then one day in the midst of filming, she disappears. So it's on film where very much from like she's walking down a street, and in the middle of the street she just vanishes. And it's been this like unresolved mystery for years. Then in our second timeline, we are in the 90s. We are following a young boy named Christopher, who he starts from a young boy. We follow him through basically until like his 30s, where he has some kind of like, he learns a bit about Jenna Turner and kind of like gets his fascination with her. And he becomes fixated on this mystery of her. And part of it is his mother, who struggles with mental illness, had a really weird reaction to Gemma Turner, and he is trying to unravel this connection, see like how his mother knew her, and also like figure out, like he's really curious to figure out what happened to her because it's this huge mystery. He's a huge film buff. It's like one of these things that like is this unsolved mystery within Hollywood, and everybody is very interested in it. So from there, he gets involved in like a weird cult. He goes on all these investigations. He like gets really like obsessive about this, and like the way that this mystery goes is nothing that I ever actually would have expected. And it was weird. It was really weird, but it worked really well for me. Like the way that things ended up working out was so strange, and I don't think one that I've ever read it in a story before. So like for that alone, it was just so intriguing and fascinating, and so much of this book was just like had me going like, what the fuck is actually happening? But I love that. I really love when it's just something so strange and unique and nothing I've ever seen before. And this was fantastic. Yeah, like I'm giving it a 4-star. It was just really interesting, and I definitely think that more people should read this one because this one's fantastic. I think it just like hasn't found its audience yet, and it hasn't found like enough people to kind of talk about it, but wonderful. Highly liked it. So finally 2 books done, and I keep going on the other ones obviously, but really excited that I actually have something done finally. I'm done my next book, which is The Girl Who Played with Fire. So yeah, I finally focused and actually finished this one, which I'm really happy that I did. Not the longest book, but you know, one that felt like it was definitely an intimidating read, we'll say. So I ended up loving this like so much. It ended up just being like a really fascinating book about like getting into this world of sex trafficking and really like finding all of this corruption within the police system and really tracking down like all of these reasons why somebody could have killed these 2 journalists. Alice. And it was just like really, really fascinating. So very slow building of the story, very like slow to get into it. But I think that was actually in its benefit because it just was like really like dropping the hints, really like dropping the information. And this feels like it was just so incredibly meticulously done. Like every detail felt like it mattered. Everything felt like it was just such an incredible like detail, an incredible like important thing that was going on. So yeah, honestly, this was fantastic. And I really like, I know I enjoyed the first one. It's just been like 10 years. So I really didn't, you know, kind of like think I'd get back into it. I didn't really like, I don't know how much my reading tastes have changed. I don't know if something that I enjoyed that long ago was still really something that I would. But I'm so happy that in this case, like, yeah, this was fantastic. I enjoyed this so much. Like, it was definitely something that I was so engrossed in immediately and just like so wanted to keep going with it. It did take a while, obviously, to read, but yeah, fantastic. And, you know, I would recommend this series. I think it's pretty good. So there we go. We have another one done. So we're at what? Three done for this video. I think I need to pick up another one of the lower number of readers ones next. Like, let's do that. I'm still very slowly making my way through Dune, but I think I should pick up one of the like less popular ones next. So I made my first DNF of the video and it's the 5 Deaths of Roxanne Love. I think this is actually the one with the least number of ratings. Because when I looked, it was like 300 and I'm pretty sure that is the least. And yeah, it wasn't great. At least like I gave it a valiant effort. I read like 70 pages and I could not do more. So we're following Roxanne Love. She is a human, or maybe not, we don't know. She has died 4 times and we are following her 5th death, and every time she comes back to life. Then we have a Reaper. He has taken it upon himself to investigate why Roxanne keeps living, and apparently it's like this media sensation. People know about it. So he decides to get involved and figure out why she does not die. So he kills somebody and then takes over their body. And he's there to witness Roxanne's death. But for some reason, he decides, even though he's there to kill her, she dies. He decides it is more important, or he decides to let her live. So this was already made no sense. So the world is implying that in order for somebody to actually die, a Reaper has to come in and take their soul. He is there ready to take her soul and decides not to, and that's why she lives. And like, I just couldn't help but wonder, is like this why she's lived every time? Like, what is the reason she's alive? Could she have died before it? Could she have actually died if he decided to take her soul? It made no sense at all. It was just this very convoluted thing of, he's like, I want her to die, but no, I don't. I'm curious why she doesn't die, but let me not do the thing that will definitely kill her. And it just, I really did not understand this world building and these rules of death. I'm sure it could have been explained later in the book. I just did not care. Really, really did not care. Wasn't jiving with the writing, wasn't jiving with the characters, made no sense whatsoever to me. So I am DNFing this. Hola! Hello, my friendos. So we have done things. We have finished the last 2 books. And this feels fantastic because you might not be able to tell, but I've been filming this video for 3 months, and this has been like the longest video I've ever taken my time doing, entirely because like it was one that I never prioritized, and I was always like, oh, I'll post it next month, I'll do it later. So here we are, like 3 months later. It is June. I think I started filming this in March, and yeah, we are finally done all of these books. And I'll definitely say that these were books too that like there was no part of me that wanted to prioritize them, which wasn't a mistake, because there were some really good ones. I just like hardcore was putting off anything to this video. So let's talk about these final 2 books that we have. And we had Desert Creatures and Dune. So I'm going to talk in order that I finished, and I did Desert Creatures first. So this is one that was on the least popular list, and it, I think, is just one that it was like kind of a weird sci-fi. And I think that is one of those things where there is definitely an audience for weirder sci-fi books, and I am one of them through and through. But like for the most part, there's not as many people who read them, I think, compared to big sci-fis like this one. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is pretty decent. It just like, I think its audience is maybe a little hard to find. So in this one, we're in a futuristic world where basically all civilization seems to be non-existent. We don't know for sure, but it's primarily focused in like Nevada and in the desert. So there could be other things happening, but it seems as though the world has really fallen apart due to a climate crisis. And right now there's not really like a functioning society. So we're following in this one a young woman and her father who have been basically kicked out of their community because they are believed to be witches. So that's kind of part of the thing is now in this world, the technology is kind of, it's existent, but very like not to today's level anymore. And the world is really like run by mythological thinkings, a lot of religion, a lot of like beliefs in magic. So she and her father leave and they eventually kind of get in with this group of, what are they called? Refugees. No, not refugees, pilgrims. They eventually get into a group of pilgrims who are going to the holy city of Las Vegas to try and find a saint there. Our main character has a clubfoot, and this is one of those things where the saint is said to be able to like basically heal anything of your body if you have enough faith. So they decide to go to Las Vegas to try and heal her and make a new life for themselves. Things happen, and then this young girl ends up being on her own in the desert for years. And we're really just following her journey where years later she decides to make an attempt again to get to Las Vegas. And she didn't make it when she was a young girl, so she decides to try again and try to really fend for herself and find a way to like prove that she is really faithful and that she is deserving of this miracle. So it was like it was weird. And it's one that the plot didn't necessarily feel like it was that, that much of a driving force for it. It just very much felt like there was not a crazy amount of plot. And I could see that being an issue for a lot of people. But for me, I was kind of just going along with the vibes. And there's absolutely times where that is fine for me. Like I have no issues with just having a book that is very vibey and not much else happening. So I did enjoy it. It's a 3 stars. It's not anything that spectacular. It didn't do anything like incredible for me, but I liked it. I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought it was definitely a unique sci-fi book and one that I probably would put on a list of like underhyped sci-fi books for more people to read. So it was 3 stars. It was fine. I actually liked it a lot. And yeah, again, I completely understand why that is on the least popular list. It's just one that I feel like its audience is probably like not that big, So then after that, finished Dune. This one took me, I think this is the reason that the video didn't go up for so long, is that this one took me a solid 3 months to read. And that was entirely just on the fact that I could not focus on it, but I loved it. I loved every moment of it. I just kept not picking it up. And honestly, like I'm giving it 5 stars. I thought this was incredible. I absolutely loved it. I was so engrossed. I loved learning more about the world, more about the like politics that are going on in this world, like deep details that just I find incredibly fascinating to learn about the Bene Gesserits, the Montans, like all the empire, everything. I just got a phone call, so honestly, I kind of forget where it was, but I really liked learning a lot more about the planet of Arrakis itself. The book really got into a lot of things about the ecology of the planet and how certain things work, and more about how the Fremen, the people of Arrakis, really like believe in the Lisan al-Gaib and how they think that he is really going to be the one to change their world. All of the different things that this like mythology that the Bene Gesserit like created for them, like how it's all coming to be, and all of these things that like it's really just fascinating to see. And I'm now so incredibly excited to get into the next books. I did buy Dune Messiah, which is book 2, because I'm really excited to pick that one up and see more about like this world, more of what happens, and because part of it at the end, the things are going wildly different, and just really seeing like more of this about how just more of this world. I'm really excited. I gave it 5 stars. Honestly, like the only reason that this one took so long to read is just I wasn't prioritizing it. It was one that I knew would take my like entire brain power to be reading it. Not really, but like it was one that really needed like a lot of focus, and I was really prioritizing books that were quick reads and stuff that I didn't have to put a lot of thought into instead. So when I did finally pick this up and like really focus, so glad I did. And yeah, Dune's fantastic. Read it if you haven't. It's great. So that is the end of this video. We have read all of these books. In general, I feel like kind of what I was saying in the intro, the books that are the most popular are kind of the ones that have been out the longest, the ones that have had the longest time to find people, the ones that have kind of stayed as classics. So it really makes sense for all of these why they were like in the most popular, the most read books. And then the least popular, they're just kind of all of them, I think, kind of weirder books that hadn't found their audience, or bad, really bad. 5 Jacks or Roxanne Love was not great, but like Desert Creatures and The Star and the Strange Moon, I think those are just straight up ones that haven't found their audience and really are decent books. Like The Star and the Strange Moon, one of my favorite weird thrillers I've read in a while. So, you know, like pretty good books. So I am incredibly happy that I read all of these, and I feel fantastic about discovering some new books in this video. So if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Hopefully I will see you in some videos soon, and let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are. So hopefully I will see you soon. Bye.